See him holding on to his knee and down.
Welcome to Off the Ball Podcast, Episode 3, The Best That Never Was, the 2011-2012 Chicago Bulls, with your host, Chris LeBron.
And we are live. What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball Podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron, and we have another edition of The Best That Never Was, Episode 3. The first episode was the Oklahoma City Thunder. Me and my guy Will covered that. One of the biggest what-if teams in NBA history. Episode 2, we covered the Heatles with my guy Mo Murphy, first year of that team, one of the most polarizing teams in NBA history. And on episode 3, another team that is another what-if, maybe one of the biggest what-ifs, along with that OKC team. For different reasons, obviously, but I'm excited to dive into the 2011-2012 Chicago Bulls. And I have a Bulls fan with me. I was recently on his show not too long ago. We talked New York Knicks, and I'm happy to have him on this show to chop it up about this team. Hopefully we don't see any tears from him, so I can't promise that. So I'm happy to have my guy Sava from the Courtside. What's going on, brother?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Appreciate you having it, man. I'm looking forward to it. I can't promise no tears, but I'll try. I'll do my best, man. I'm a grown man.
When I started to do this, thought about this, and I'm like, thinking about the teams, this was one of the teams that automatically popped in my head. And most people were like, are you going to talk about that Bulls team? Because, Sava, obviously, you got the Derrick Rose jersey in the back. I mean, that guy was... he is Chicago, right? He is from Chicago and all that. Right. It's synonymous with Chicago. And it felt like this team was the team that was going to take down Miami. So just to go back a little bit with this, year before, kind of the breakout season, Derrick Rose was the MVP, number 1 seed. They get to the conference finals, play Miami. They win game 1, I believe, losing gentleman's sweep. But you're like, okay, they're coming. This team is coming. I mean, You have Joakim Noah, who's a all defensive type player. Newell Deng was another all NBA defender, all defense type of guy. And you were just like, Tom Thibodeau, a rising, coach. I think this is that was his second year when they won. When they went against Miami in the conference finals, and you're just like, wow. I mean, they're finally gonna. The Jordan era was so long ago, and then you had there was some rough years. I mean, Eddie Curry, Tyson Chandler years, Jamal Crawford years. There were some rough years for Bulls fans. People forget about those times, but it finally felt like, okay, we the team. We the team to do that. So how did you feel going into this season after, having, a little taste of what of that previous year, getting to the conference and playing, obviously Miami Heat, you was led by LeBron James and D Wade.
Yeah, no, it's great that you guys covered the Miami season before because it plays a big part in this story, right? Mm-hmm. If we're looking at it this way, yes, they won one game and they lost, and that was kind of they got a taste. We can beat Miami, maybe they didn't beat them this year. High expectations, but it's not even that they beat Miami in one game in the series that they played. Is that Miami lost after that.
Yeah.
So it was the ultimate proof, they are beatable. And by a team not full of all-stars, not, team led by Dirk, who was at that point like 58, I think, but I'm not sure. They might have faked his birth certificate. So, and so everybody saw, including the Bulls, that, yes, we can beat Miami. And now the expectations were through the roof because before it was like, oh, well, we surprised we're there, and now it's for real. So obviously the expectations up there. We know we can beat Miami. We know we can be better. The whole mentality of the team, the kind of to be the opposite of Miami. We're not that glamorous South Beach, whatever. We are the Chicago, the Windy City. It's tough. It's cold in here. We are tough like that. We're going to play that defense. Obviously, with Tibbs running the show, you would expect that defense. And so, expectations were up there. And we're going to talk more about it. But of course, as a fan, this was the season that'll look like this is the one,
Yeah, and I remember hearing Joakim Noah. I think he was on like Barstool or something. And I remember I was on the drive and I'm listening to, and you could hear in his voice like this was the team, or like this was the team that was going to take down Miami and possibly win a championship. Like they had older pieces. You added Carlos Boozer a few years ago, in that big free agency year. Obviously having Derrick Rose, who you drafted, who was the youngest MVP in NBA history. You got Joakim Noah, like you mentioned before, Luol Deng. You got, Luol Deng's I believe he makes the All-Star team this year. Joakim Noah's on his way up too. And you had some core veteran pieces, along with this team, and it just felt right. I mean, so like we mentioned before, number 1 seed the previous year. All right, so you have that taste. Go into this season, expectations are, okay, it's Miami, it's Chicago. We're waiting for that collision course, right? And it looks like it's going to be that way because you guys will end up being, again, in the strike shortened season, go 50-16. All right, number 1 seed, number 1 defense. You guys, we all know what Tibbs does, right? He was the defensive coordinator essentially for those Boston's teams that were KG defensive player of the year. Those Knicks teams, and then now we see him now with the Knicks and those Timberwolves. Well, defense is number 1, and obviously, I mean, giving up 88 points a game, and I know the NBA was different back then.
Still crazy,
but man. That's 88 points a game. Number 1 in defense. The offense was kind of middle of the pack, but we knew it was we're going to win by just absolutely stifling teams.
They were actually 5th in offensive rating, so it wasn't that bad. Second on defense, 5th in the offense, and that just seems like a perfect mix. And I'm glad you brought up the roster because, as you said, it was a perfect mix. You have the core that everybody knows about, Boozer, Derrick Rose, all those guys. But then you also had the veterans. You had Rip Hamilton right there. You had Kyle Korver, John Lucas. I mean, all those guys. You also have Scalabrine for some reason, but every
Jimmy Butler, a young Jimmy Butler, who's a young Jimmy Butler. Well,
I wouldn't even. Yeah, there's not much to talk about.
He doesn't. But it's just crazy how he was just
right. He was there. Yeah. Every championship level team supposed to have a meme guy. Lakers had Caruso. We had Brian Scalabrine at that point.
The White Mamba, man. Every team has that one guy on their team,
right?
Every guy has one of those guys on their team. But like I say, Taj Gibson, I mean, just it really felt like this year was like, okay, they could do it. They could be. And we saw, listen, Miami, they lost the previous year. LeBron did not look like LeBron, especially in some games late, right? So it was like, okay, if there's a team that could do it, it's going to be, the Chicago Bulls. And, obviously Derrick Rose wins the MVP the previous year. And, like I said, we mentioned, 50 wins again, even in the strikes in the shortened season, number 1 in attendance. It just, everything was going right for Chicago, right? It felt like this was, Jordan, the Jordan era, right? Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, the whole crew. It felt like Chicago, everything is rocking. The city is rocking. The homegrown, like kind of like LeBron in Cleveland. But even different because Derek is from Chicago. It's like,
right.
It's different. And it's just like, okay, we have this young superstar in the making. He could be the next face of the league. And like I said, success during the season. Derrick Rose has his injuries, right? And this is kind of this kind of leads to everything, right? And it's like, I don't think people thought about it too much during the season. He had some knick-knack injuries, but you're like, all right, he'll be ready to go. And what's great about this season too is like, all right, you didn't lose more than 2 games at all, right? The longest losing streak was 2. Had an 8-game win streak. You guys, it just consistently, just over every, throughout the season. Derek makes the All-Star team. I did believe Luol Deng makes the All-Star team. He's an all defensive type of guy, and also Derrick Rose, I believe in January signs his extension. Because he already eclipsed all his accolades during his rookie contract, and it's I think it's called the Rose, kind of like the Rose deal, where you hit all those. I mean, he was an MVP during his rookie contract, So he hit all these escalades, and he wound up signing what it was a 5-year, $95 million contract, I believe, in January.
Sounds
So
funny now. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy, right? And it's crazy, like signs the deal, and then obviously we all know, and like I said, we're gonna get into that part because it's, I know that hurts a lot of Bulls fans. But
yeah.
just talk to me about your feelings during this season and just how you're feeling. Yes, Derrick is banged up, but like you said, you got Luol Deng, you got Joakim Noah, you got Gibson. You guys, even with Derrick being banged up, you guys still managed to go through the season. Like you said, longest losing streak was 2 games, and that's
It's
once.
crazy.
I believe he only lost 2 games once. So the consistency, even with Derrick banged up, I think Derrick only played, 38 or 39 games. So the consistency was there, even with Derrick, Luol Deng stepped up, Boozer, Joakim, all those guys. So just talk to me about your feeling during this season.
Well, if the season was a book, a fictional book, those injuries would be foreshadowing. Obviously, because that's what it was essentially.
It really
if you
was.
look at it,
It really
obviously
was.
it's not scripted, but if it was, it is straight up foreshadowing of what's going to happen. But if anything, there was positive in the injuries, not because people like to see him get hurt, obviously, but because fans and everybody around the league watched that team win games without him. And guys step up when it matters. And that's what you want to see. You don't want to see a team that relies strictly on one extremely talented guy, of course, but they can do it on their own. And that was a great sign for everybody, and that's, I think, this is the biggest takeaway of the injuries. Yes, he was missing games. So there were concerns, but at the same time, with the way he was playing, it was kind of expected, more or less. When you're that explosive and you're that fast, it is hard. But the fact that the team was able to win games without him was a big positive and something that made people even more excited, basically.
Yeah, and like I said, it's the excitement, like we mentioned, number one in attendance. I'm sure Derrick had a top 2-3 jersey behind LeBron. I'm sure it was up there. It just the city, everyone was buzzing. And it felt like this was kind of a low-key America's team in a way, because obviously, we and I talked about this in episode 2 with the Miami. They were the bad guys.
Yeah,
they were the villains. They were the Joker. Everyone hated them. Nobody was rooting for Miami. Nobody cared the LeBron stuff, all that good stuff he had in Cleveland. Being from bleeding from Ohio and all that. It was gone. They built this super team, and now it's like, okay, who's going to be that team to take them off? And then it's like, oh, we got this 21-year-old kid who's from Chicago, leading the team. Chicago, Michael Jordan's Bulls. Like, it's like, okay, everyone was rocking with. It felt like everyone was rocking with the Bulls, and everyone was like, everybody wanted the Bulls to knock off the Miami Heat, and we go through the season. I think they even split. They split the season series with Miami, right? 'Cause everyone was talking, they split the season series with Miami. So you're like, okay, it's inevitable, right? It's inevitable.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen, right? It is absolutely inevitable. We're going to see Miami versus the Chicago Bulls. Yes, Derrick, we mentioned before, Derrick's been banged up, but he'll be all right. We're going to go into the season. We got the number 1 seed locked up. Our defense is on point. Everything is just going our way. And,
and then it doesn't.
And then it doesn't. So just talk to me about, everything, that happened during the regular season, getting towards the playoff. What's your feeling? What's the feeling around all the Bulls fans going into the playoffs? Are you guys like, it's Miami? We don't want the Knicks. We don't want Boston. We want Miami.
Right. Now, well, you brought up some good points. I mean, it was America's team, because what happens, like, if those teams, like, and I'm sure you can relate in a way, when the teams like the Bulls, when the teams like the Knicks are good, it's good. People just love to see it. Nobody likes to see big market teams being on the bottom. And with the Bulls, I know you brought up a good point that they were leading the league in attendance. actually Bulls lead the league in attendance almost every year. Like even if they're
Guys,
bottom, like complete garbage, people still
it's
love
kind
to
of like
go
the
and
Knicks
watch
too,
them.
bro. It's the Knicks have
Right,
been
right,
garbage for
right,
prior to this year, almost 20 years, and it's still
right.
number one in attendance. And it's like it's number one Forbes brand. It's like how, but hey, it's
How?
the
But
brand, the Chicago brand, New York brand. It's very strong.
and when those teams are actually good, it shows.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the story of having the big three not being traded for, not have them drafted, basically
Yeah.
have the homegrown product.
Homegrown, yeah.
It
You guys
always
drafted
feels good.
all
Always.
drafted guys, essentially, right? You added Boozer, but that's okay, right? You
That's all
build your
right.
team, you add a couple veterans here and there, and boom, you had a team that people were like, hey, I got to root for that Miami team. That's not natural. This is
Right.
Chicago team, okay, this is natural, and they got that young superstar, okay, we behind this.
Yeah. People love the underdogs. And I mean, by no means it's the underdog team, but it felt like it because of how much talent was on the Miami team, how high were the expectations for the Miami. So in comparison, they look like the underdog, even though they technically weren't.
Yeah.
So that's with the season. Now, going to the playoffs, obviously, with what the fans learned from the season, that the team is capable of winning, that we have that defense, and defense is the key to stopping Miami. Whenever you see a team that's so good on offense, we're talking about Miami, we're talking about Golden State,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to outscore those teams. You're just not. They just have more talent, and that's just what it is. It doesn't matter how good you guys are. It doesn't matter how locked in they are, how much they're going to step up. They're probably not going to outscore them. So what you got to do, you got to apply more pressure on defense, and that's what essentially what Dallas did in the year that they won, and just wanted to take the same blueprint and apply it, against Miami this year. So obviously we know it didn't happen, but that was the look. That was what they were going for, essentially.
Did you have any worry going into this playoffs? Because obviously we know Derrick is the go-to guy, right? He's a scoring option and all that. But just worried about maybe, not having Luol Deng was good, right? He's a good player, but not having that other guy who could possibly take over. Was there any worry with Chicago, or were you like, okay, if we just play, we don't have to score 110, even 100 points. Like if we keep it in the 90s, we could trust our defense to be able to make up for all that. Was there any worry that, okay, what if Derrick's not Derrick, and can Luol take that, be that, that Robin essentially?
Yeah, I mean, in the back of my mind, of course it was, but with the hype and everything, I guess it wasn't. Nobody saw what happened coming, essentially. So, no, it was never a concern. It was like, Derek's going to do his thing. The guy's going to do their thing. We're going to play that great defense, and that's how we're going to win the championship. And it's fair. I mean, because at the end of the day, even with Derek being out, we still had that season record that you can look at and say, like, oh no, this team is going to win. They won a lot of games. They're going to be good. Yeah. They're going to be set. So that's basically how it was.
Yeah. So obviously, number one seed, collision course, with Miami, right? But there are, there's the Pacers team lurking, but it's Miami, Chicago. That's what everyone wants. It looks like we're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the playoffs. Okay. Game 1 versus the Philadelphia 76ers. At best, this series is going 5, right? That's, you guys are like, all right, whatever. They may sneak a game. We'll be up 3-0. We'll win a game. It's we're going to go to the next round. And Bulls fans, we all know what happens. Fourth quarter, a few minutes left in the game. Bulls have the game.
Under 2 minutes, I believe.
Yeah, it was around like a minute.
That's like 15 seconds, something like that.
Minute left. Derrick Rose, crow hops. He pulls up, and when you watch this video, it's actually obviously heartbreaking, because obviously even 10 years, 11 years later, it's you're just like, wow, like I can't believe. But it's like you hear the gas in the United Center, even if you're watching on, and I can imagine, I don't know if you were there or anyone that was there, that it could probably hear a pin drop when that happened, because he goes down and you're not sure what happened. Mm-hmm. And even in the replay, you're like, you don't see like a true bend and all that, but he's down and the whole arena is just silent, and you're just like, what is going on? What is going on right now? And he's down, and it's just like, oh my God, like Derrick's down. And like I said, we had the injuries during the season, but this doesn't look good. So give me your reaction when you see him go down.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't there personally. Obviously, I watched it on TV. Now, when it happened originally, it looked like he just sprained his ankle or something,
Yes.
which would be bad enough, and obviously not something you want to see. You never want to see somebody get hurt, but it didn't look bad. Well, not originally, at least.
Yes, of course.
If you watch the replay, it just looks like he twisted the ankle a bit. As you said, there's no bending, no like, if you look, for example, last year when Giannis got his injury, like that looked terrifying.
That looked like terrifying. It was over. He tore everything in his knee possible. Like Milwaukee's, they're done. It's going to be Derrick Rose all over again. And then it was like, oh, it's just a hyperextended knee. You're like, that's it?
I still can't wrap my mind around this.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Like that was one of those injuries. You saw it and you were like, oh, holy, I mean, they can't be good. Derrick Rose's originally it didn't look that bad. And it was like, okay, well, another little injury. Hopefully he's going to be good going forward. And then he wasn't. First of all, why was he in the game? That's probably the biggest question.
That's probably the biggest question in Chicago for the last 10, 11 years. I was like, why was he in the game?
Why was he in the game?
You had a nice lead. Like, this is a team that you should easily handle. You don't need him in the game, but he is in the game, and it changed the fortune of the Chicago Bulls for the rest of for the next whatever amount of years. It changed the NBA history. Mm-hmm. It really did, that injury, and it's one of those moments, not just in basketball history, but in sports history, where you're like, that moment, it makes everyone sad. Whether you're a Bulls fan, whether you're a Pacers fan, whether you're a Knicks fan, whether you're whatever, Clippers, you were devastated when that happened, because especially knowing how his career kind of goes. And obviously he's made a nice return, and he was a 6 Man of the Year candidate. He's had a good career, and possibly still can have a Hall of Fame career. But that injury kind of derailed what we were witnessing. We were witnessing something special with him, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Youngest MVP of all time. I mean, this guy, back-to-back number one seed, led his team, and that injury, it was devastating. It was a devastating injury, and I'm sure the city of Chicago and Bulls fans were just like, wow. Like, when you heard the news official, Derrick's out, torn ACL, well, what was that feeling like? Like, did you feel like just someone punched you right in the gut?
It was crazy. Obviously, everybody knew there's no championship, put the confetti away. That's not going to happen. And yes, the team is nice. And as I said before, throughout the season, people didn't pay that much attention to the injuries because it felt like, the team can win without him. But then he just knew they ain't going to go far. Yeah. There was some expectations. Maybe they're still going to, win the first round, but even that didn't happen because Andre Iguodala is a bad man.
Yeah, man. He had a good one. And then, obviously, and we mentioned before the scoring, right? That was the biggest thing, right? Mm-hmm. You lose Derrick, you lose a lot.
You lose the scoring, basically. Yeah,
you lose the playmaking, you lose the scoring. The ability to take over. And now, I mean, you wound up losing the next three, and got blown out in game 2. Obviously, you expected that. I mean, the energy was it's just not there. And game 3, it was a defensive. It was an ugly game. Game 4, a little bit high scoring, but then game 5, you win. Ugly game. I think it was 77 to like 67.
Yeah.
It was an ugly game. And then game 6 was close, but just didn't have enough to and like I say, Iguodala had a good game and all that. You lose a series. Well, what's the feeling? What's the feeling? Is it like, okay, all right, next season's probably a wash because he'll probably miss the next season. We'll just get ready for 2014 or whatever. Is it that, or is it just like I don't know what to feel. I don't know.
No, not at all. I mean, at first there was definitely expectation with him being so young, and there's like, okay, well, I mean, he's out and we're not going to win this season, but he's going to be back next year, because originally nobody knew he was going to be out for that long. Yeah. Because at first it was like, okay, 6, 7, 8 months, he'll be back. So there's always next year. The team's going to get better. There's that weird guy named Jimmy Butler. Maybe he's any good. We'll see. And so essentially, originally, it didn't seem like that big of a deal. It was heartbreaking at the moment, but I guess we didn't fully know the implications going forward. At least for me and for a lot of other fans that I know, it was heartbreaking. It's sad. The whole season goes down, but there's going to be the next season, and we're going to be back, and it's going to be okay. So basically, that's how I felt, and how a lot of fans that I knew that's how they felt.
Yeah, and this was a big thing too, because get to a little bit to the next season, not too much, but just talking about Derrick, because he's obviously a focal point. When we talk about this 11-12 Chicago Bulls, and just the history of the Bulls, especially around this time. Obviously, the ACL happens. Was there any like hard feelings for Derrick when there was rumors that he was he could play the following season, especially towards the late? Was there any hard feelings when he didn't play? And then because you guys still had championship aspirations, that at least, hey, maybe if we get him for that late stretch, and we could still do this because we still have a great team, and he's the missing piece, and we could hey, whatever happened, we lost last year, but hey, we get him for the stretch run, we can do this for the following season. Was there any hard feelings with Derrick when you found out he could play but he just chose not to? Did you respect the decision, or were you like, man, this is an opportunity to maybe show some, to try to maybe do a championship or something? How was that taken in Chicago Bulls fandom?
Well, with the fandom, I can't speak for the whole fandom. For me personally, I respected the decision, and I was like, okay, if you need more time, you need more time. And partially, I guess, for the fact, because of everything else that happened that year, Miami didn't have to play against the Bulls. They went out there and they got the first championship, and the team looked great. And after that, you kind of knew it. It's not, they maybe not as beatable as we thought they were going to be. Once the Bulls are back in the playoffs, I guess we're going to have to see. And that was the whole idea. I mean, I wanted him to take as much time as he needed, because at the end of the day, I just wanted him to be healthy and be back and be himself. And that also kind of didn't happen going forward, which I don't know how much you want to go talk about that, but he basically never came back.
Yeah, he wasn't there much longer, which is kind of crazy. I think he was only there for what? So he tears his ACL, he misses the next season, then he only plays 10 games when he comes back, because then he tore his meniscus. And I'm sure that was like, oh my God, this can't be happening. Like, is he gonna be, Greg Oden, and are we gonna see Grant that Hill? Or are we gonna see Grant Hill, Penny Hardaway, T-Mac? Are we gonna see his career get cut short because of all these injuries? And it was just, unfortunately, that's essentially what happened. And we could probably do a Derrick Rose show alone, because it's just the story, the start, and then this, and then obviously he's reclaimed himself, and he is still a hell of a basketball player. Obviously, he's not the Derrick we saw obviously around this time, but still has managed to put out a very good career, and like we said, having success. And I'm sure even Bulls fans are happy to see him have that success, no matter what jersey he puts on. Seeing Derrick, that's your guy. You grew up like this is, he was Chicago born. Seeing him have success, no matter what uniform he is something you want to see, I'm sure, as a Bulls fan.
Yeah. I mean, he had to go out there and reinvent him. Too many times he tried to go back to being the old MVP, Derrick Rose, and jumping and all that stuff. And then at some point he just realized, that's not me. I can't be that anymore. And I'm very fortunate that he was able to reinvent himself and have this conversation with himself and realize who he is and what he has to be as a basketball player in order to keep playing the game that he loves. But of course, for the Bulls fans, regardless of where he plays, I mean, hopefully we'll see him in the uniform eventually. There was a lot of chatter this offseason that potentially we can get him. It didn't happen, but if one day he's going to come back, I'm sure the city is going to go nuts for that. And I don't blame him. I mean, we would love to see him back, but regardless of where he plays, nothing but the best wishes for Derrick Rose. And whenever he plays here, at United Center, there's always standing ovations and stuff, and it's
Oh
nothing
yeah,
but love.
he's forever a Chicago Bull, and we're
Oh yeah,
we're treating him right in New York, so no worries.
yeah,
We're
I know.
taking care of Derrick. We love Derrick here, and obviously, he got traded to the Knicks,
Mhm.
originally, from Chicago, and that stint didn't go well with the Knicks and all that, and
Yeah,
we know the devastation. If you saw the documentary, how devastated he was, because this is all he knows is Chicago, right?
yeah.
He,
Well,
he it's
mhm.
crazy. It was sad to see that, but it was that change. I mean, no matter how much money you make or whatever, when you get a change like that so drastic, when you're so accustomed to being Chicago, you are Chicago. That's always gonna be tough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one thing too, once he got traded to the Knicks, he was still at that stage when he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go back to it,"
Yeah, yeah,
and he wasn't trying to be the new Derrick Rose. He was still the old Derrick Rose, and that didn't work out. And ultimately, led to more frustration. So yeah, there was that. But yeah, let's go back to the season.
yeah.
It was like,
And but the season, obviously, you lose 4-2 to the Sixers.
mhm.
Tough way to lose. Derrick's done. Just give me a recap of this season. I mean, and then we had the preseason before. You're that young up and coming team. Everything looks like, oh, we're going to be here for the next 10 years. It's going to be, we're going to win a couple. I'm sure you're like thinking, wow, the Bulls era. Everyone's keeps raving about the Bulls era. Hey, we got the Derrick Rose era. It's about to take off. We're about to win championships. This guy's 21 years old. He just won the MVP.
Mhm.
Sky's just the limit. And then you go into the season, still had a number one seed again. Obviously, we all know how it ends. Just talk to me about that 2-year stretch and how how talked about it is it in Bulls fandom, in Bulls Nation, and just what when you talk to your other Bulls fans and all that, when you go back to this, I'm sure you guys always go back to this, and just what if, do you think, like, if he's healthy, we do it, we win championships? Like, just talk to me about that.
Well, that season is the definition of what if. When we talk about the scenarios like this one, when if some went different, and this and that, the whole season was a whole roller coaster of the year before.
Mhm.
First zero expectations, then all of a sudden the MVP season, and then hey, maybe we can take Miami, win game one, and this and that,
Mhm.
and then doesn't go the way. But then it's like, okay, we're gonna get them next season. We're gonna be even better, even bigger, and then it doesn't happen, and injuries and this and that, and still a good record, and then the way it went once again, all the way down. Back then, obviously, it was very frustrating. There was a lot of emotions. A lot of people were mad. I mean, obviously, coach basically got thrown under the bus for that decision. Like, why was he even playing at that point? And I don't think there's a solid answer to it. He wasn't supposed to be on the floor. But at the end of the day, now many years after, I just feel like if we're being real about it, I don't want to say they wouldn't be able to win the championship, maybe fully healthy, because Miami, another, right there, they won the run. They looked unstoppable. I mean, it, I don't even know if that Bulls team at the full potential was able to take on the Thunder.
Mhm.
Maybe they were, but it would have been a battle. It wouldn't be, the way Miami played against them. So now looking back at it, and trying to be real, I mean, with Derrick Rose and the way he played and his injury history, maybe if not then, it still probably would have happened down the road.
Mhm.
I mean, it wasn't his first injury. There were signs before, and if you look at it, as I said, if it was a book, it was foreshadowing.
Yeah, because
And
that season, like I said, he only played 39 games, had a lot of injuries, was dealing
Mhm.
with that season. So it was, like you said, maybe people didn't think about, okay, maybe this could be something bigger.
Right,
And little did we know that it was way bigger than we ever anticipated, because it essentially ended his prime. Let's be real, like, he
right
has
there, yeah,
never, his prime was over in just his third year in the league,
yeah,
and that's crazy to think. And that's why he's one of the biggest what ifs of all time because an MVP at 21 years old, does he accept youngest MVP of all time? He's leading this Chicago Bulls team back-to-back years as a 1 seed, going to the conference finals against the Miami Heat, and like on a collision course again. It's just like it's what if?
It's crazy. Yeah,
you could do a whole series on what if, and this is Derrick is another what if, and this Bulls team is another what if because defensively stout. If Derrick's healthy, maybe that's just enough to get them over the top, but we'll never know that.
We'll never know, unfortunately.
We'll never know, unfortunately.
Yeah. The only way for me to look back at it is just try to see the positives that we got. Obviously, there was nothing positive about Derrick Rose, Anthony, his prime right there at that point, but a lot of other things that we got as a Bull fans. Obviously, none of them led to a championship, but the Jimmy Butler era that we got and what he got from him. And
bam, like Jimmy Butler's on the come up, right? We just mentioned this is his rookie season. All right. So we all know what Jimmy Butler is now, right? Multiple time. I think he's a 5-time All-Star, led the Miami Heat to the finals. Imagine you get a fully healthy Derrick and you got Jimmy coming along, and we've seen how we could do scoring, right? He maybe helps him and Derrick and Lowell. It's just so many what ifs. I mean, what if this, what if that? And that's why I wanted to cover this team. And I know I've covered 2 teams, in this year, OKC. But these 2 teams are, a lot of people are saying, man, we might get OKC versus Chicago. You got a young KD, you got a young Derrick Rose, Westbrook's up. You got James Harden, who was 6th man of the year this year, I believe. So you got some stars on both these teams. Joakim Noah, defensive anchor, Luol Deng. Like you said, young Jimmy Butler. We don't even know. We're not even thinking about Jimmy Butler at this point. But little do we know that he's, he rises to be one of the best players in the league. So we're thinking, how many people are thinking, oh, I'm the OKC versus Chicago? I mean, that might be a finals we might see, down the line.
Yeah. And
it doesn't happen. And obviously we, when I covered OKC, we all know how that ends. With that, they had a big 3 and didn't even know they had a big 3. They had 3 MVPs. And it's just crazy how, that ended and how OKC is now, and then Chicago, how it is now. And obviously, you guys have revamped and gotten back, but we see OKC. It's like wow, like at one point they had 3 MVPs, and not just 3 MVPs. They have 3 Hall of Famers, and 2 maybe top 5. KD. I just did my top 100. List. I had KD at number 1, James top 10, Russell's top 20. I mean, that just doesn't exist, right. And naturally you drafted those 3. So, and that's what people loved about those 2 teams, natural. They drafted the OKC drafted all their guys. The Bulls essentially drafted all the guys. You added a few pieces with Carlos Boozer, and it's like, wow, this is what we want to see. We don't want to see Miami. We want to see
Just like Golden State later, they got their big 3 that they drafted, and people love them the same way.
Yeah, until they got KD and
right. Well, then
and then they hated, but it's the 2011-2012 Chicago Bulls. It's going to be a team 10, 20, 30 years down the line when we talk to when we're the old heads on the block and we're just like, yo. You got to go back to that 2011-12, man. That team, if Derrick Rose is healthy, what could have been, man? They would have won a championship, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to go down as the one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history, in sports history. Obviously, Derrick's injury is one of the saddest things because we obviously know what happens after. He just wasn't the same player, but obviously he has some success. But Sava, final thoughts on the 2011-2012 Chicago Bulls and just, your overall take on this team.
Well, I appreciate you getting me depressed for the rest of the week.
Hey, man, I've been depressed for 20 years, bro. So I feel that we've had one play. The next season, we had our best year ever. So, I feel your pain on that, man. It's been long sadness in New York. But
yeah, but to keep it real, like, when we're talking about what ifs, that one hits different, not just, for me as a Bulls fan, but just overall looking at it. The two other teams that you covered, obviously Thunder, they didn't know what they had. They still went on a decent run, never ended in championship, but they had some years after that and a lot of good memories. And then Miami, obviously, that you covered, what they did after the season that they lost. Here, this is the dynasty that never happened. Literally because of one stupid coaching decision, a dynasty was cut short. And there was that's basically what it was. So yeah, if somebody was looking for a what if, that's the biggest one of them, in my opinion.
Yep, it definitely is one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history, and I was happy to cover this team because it's one of the most intriguing teams I've been able to do, and I appreciate you coming on the show, brother. No better person to talk about this team than you, brother. So,
Appreciate it.
episode 3, best that never was, the 2011-2012 Chicago Bulls. I'll be working on episode 4. But before we sign off on the best that never was, Sava, tell the people where they can find you. You got any projects? Post. Let us know where you can find you on social media, all that good stuff.
I got you. The best place to find me, obviously, on YouTube, looking for Courtside. That's my main channel. That's where all my content comes out. If you want more, Instagram, Courtside IG, and Twitter, Courtside TW.
There we go. And I'll make sure to put all the links and descriptions. Make sure to follow his YouTube channel. It is doing great. One of the best NBA content creators out here. So it was a pleasure to have him on the show. It was a pleasure to be doing a lot of stuff with him. Because I was on the show last time talking about the Knicks. And so, I'm sure we're going to be doing more stuff down the line. So make sure to follow him at Courtside. I'll put all the links in the description. And that's it. Best that never was, episode 3. I'm Chris LeBron from the Off the Ball Pod. Make sure to follow me Off the Ball Pod. I'm working on episode 4 of the best that never was. So just follow me there, and I'll keep you posted on what I got. A few teams in mind. I'll probably figure out which team I'll be doing, in the next few days. So check me out, Off the Ball Pod, Instagram, Off the Ball Podcast, and all that good stuff. I just posted a new article, my top 100 NBA players. So check that out, offtheballnetwork.com. I'll post the links and all that. So on that note, Courtside, Off the Ball, we're signing off. Best that never was, episode 3, 2011-2012 Chicago Bulls and the Raps. Be well, be safe. Take care, guys. Peace.